Let's unpack this. Imagine you're a new parent. Retired, of course, but just completely thrilled, watching your tiny, perfect little one sleep, just soaking in the quiet, the sheer miracle of it. Then you notice it, a pause, a tiny little breath-holding moment, and boom, your heart just does a flip. You lean in closer, probably holding your own breath, thinking, what's going on? It's that universal anxiety, isn't it? Where pure love meets, well, pure panic. It's a feeling almost every new parent knows. Pretty unsettling. So today we're doing a deep dive into exactly that phenomenon. Newborn periodic breathing. We've gone through a stack of sources, articles, research, clinical guidelines, basically, to give you a solid guide. Our mission today is really to pull out the most important bits, the key takeaways, so you feel informed, confident, and hopefully a lot less anxious about this really common newborn thing.
And that feeling of anxiety, it's completely understandable. I mean, you see your baby pause breathing. Of course it's worrying. But what's fascinating and kind of reassuring is that while those pauses can look genuinely alarming enough to make your stomach just drop, periodic breathing is actually, well, completely normal. It's often an expected part of a newborn's first few months. So our deep dive today is all about understanding why that happens. And this is crucial, how to tell it apart from something that might be truly serious. It's a very common temporary developmental stage. It's not usually a sign of a problem.
Right. So we're here to equip you with the knowledge, basically, to help you recognize normal periodic breathing, understand the physiology behind it, the why, and most importantly, know when you actually should seek medical advice. We want you to walk away feeling empowered, ready to observe, and understand your baby's own unique rhythms. Okay, let's start by painting a clearer picture. What does periodic breathing actually look like when you're watching your baby? The research we've looked at, it describes a pretty distinct pattern. You'll see these short pauses in breathing, typically lasting maybe 5 to 10 seconds, so not long, sustained holds. Then right after that brief pause, there's often this kind of burst of rapid, maybe shallow breaths, almost like the baby's body is quickly catching up before it settles back into a more regular rhythm again.
Exactly. That catching up phase is quite characteristic. And you might notice this happening, multiple times an hour sometimes. It's often more obvious when your baby is in a lighter sleep stage, maybe REM sleep, or sometimes even after a feeding. It's definitely most prominent in the first few months of life. It's a very observable pattern if you know what to look for.
And what's the science behind it? Why do babies actually do this? It seems so counterintuitive.
Yeah, it does feel that way. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really all boils down to the fact that a newborn's entire system is, well, it's still under construction, particularly their respiratory system, and this is key, the brain's breathing control center. You're just not fully mature yet. Think of it less like a fault and more like a neurological boot-up sequence, perhaps. It's not that they've forgotten how to breathe in a dangerous way. It's more like their developing brain temporarily fine-tunes or maybe even glitches for just a few seconds. The body then quickly compensates with those rapid breaths you mentioned. Now, what's really crucial to understand here is that during these brief pauses, the baby's oxygen levels, they stay perfectly within safe limits. It's not causing them harm. So this isn't a sign of disease. It's actually a reflection of normal neurological development. And the good news is most babies outgrow this noticeable periodic breathing by about 6 months old as their systems mature and stabilize.
That's actually a really comforting way to frame it, a boot-up sequence. Okay, but that brings us to the really big question, the one every parent watching this is probably asking. How on earth do we tell the difference between this normal, maybe slightly unnerving periodic breathing and something that truly warrants concern? Because that's where the real anxiety kicks in, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's the critical distinction. And the medical guidelines we've studied, they draw this line very clearly. So let's break down the key differences between normal periodic breathing and conditions that do need attention. Okay, first, normal periodic breathing. Like we said, the pauses are brief. Remember, 5 to 10 seconds, maybe 12 at the absolute most, but short. They resolve on their own. The baby just starts breathing again. And importantly, the baby doesn't show any other signs of distress. Their skin color stays normal, pink and healthy. They don't go limp or floppy. They generally seem well and comfortable, even during those little pauses.
Okay, so just to clarify, if a parent sees a pause, say it feels like 8 seconds, but the baby still looks pink, peaceful, maybe just sleeping soundly, that's usually in the normal range.
Precisely. That scenario typically describes normal periodic breathing. Now, contrast that with something like apnea of prematurity. Apnea just means a temporary stop in breathing. This condition primarily affects premature infants, babies born before 37 weeks gestation. The distinguishing features here are quite significant. First, the breathing pauses last longer, definitely more than 20 seconds.
20 seconds, okay. That's a key number.
Yes, a very key number. And critically, these longer pauses are often coupled with other concerning signs. Things like a drop in oxygen levels, which might cause noticeable changes in skin color. You might see the baby turn bluish or gray or very pale, especially around the mouth or face. Or maybe a slowed heart rate. This is definitely something that needs medical assessment and intervention to support the baby's breathing.
That's a huge difference right there, both in duration and the other signs. Okay, what about other serious conditions parents might worry about?
Well, then there's respiratory distress syndrome, or RDS. This is also typically seen in premature babies because their lungs aren't fully developed yet. They lack something called surfactant. The symptoms here are pretty specific and indicate the baby is really working hard to breathe. You might hear little grunting sounds with each breath. You might see their nostrils flaring as they try desperately to pull in more air. And you might see those chest retractions where the skin pulls in noticeably around the ribs or collarbone with each inhale.
Ah, right, you mentioned those earlier.
Yes. Their breathing would also be rapid and look very labored. This is a clear sign of baby struggling and definitely requires immediate medical help, often oxygen therapy. And finally, there's obstructive sleep apnea. Now, the research clarifies this is actually quite rare in full-term newborns. Unlike periodic breathing, where it's about the brain's maturity, the pauses here are due to an actual physical blockage in the airway. It's not the brain sort of pausing, it's something physically stopping the air getting through. This might be linked to anatomical issues, like enlarged tonsils or adenoids, although that's much more common in older infants or children, not typically newborns. So the key takeaway really is, with normal periodic breathing, the baby otherwise seems healthy and comfortable, even during those brief pauses. The more serious conditions involve much longer pauses, plus other visible signs of distress or struggle.
That distinction is incredibly helpful. Seriously, it feels like it empowers parents to tell the difference between, a fleeting moment of, ooh, what was that? And a genuine, okay, we need to act now. So let's get practical. What does this all mean for you, the listener? Our deep dive into the guidelines gives very clear instructions on when you need to call your pediatrician right away or even seek emergency care. These are the critical red flags you absolutely must look out for. Okay, first, any breathing pauses that last longer than 20 seconds. That's the big one. Second, look for any blue, gray, or very pale skin color, especially around the lips, the tongue, or the face. Third, be alert for any sudden limpness, unusual stillness, or if your baby becomes extremely sleepy and is really hard to wake up. And fourth, any clear signs they're struggling to breathe. That includes continuous nostril flaring, those deep chest retractions we talked about, or persistent grunting sounds with breathing. Also, things like poor feeding all of a sudden or sudden difficulty waking your baby could also be warning signs. The advice we found consistently is, if you have any doubt, just err on the side of caution. Call your doctor. Get your baby checked. It's always better to be safe. Now, while normal periodic breathing doesn't actually need treatment, the sources we looked through offer some really excellent practical tips, things you can do to create a supportive environment, both for your baby's development and, let's be honest, for your own peace of mind as parents. These are things you can integrate into your daily routine that just help create a calm, safe space.
Right, which raises the important question. What can parents actually do day to day? And our sources consistently, really strongly, highlight safe sleep practices as being paramount. Foundational, really. Always, always. Place the baby on their back to sleep. For every sleep, naps included. Using a firm, flat sleep surface, like a crib or bassinet mattress, with just a fitted sheet. No gaps. And keeping that crib totally clear, free of any pillows, loose blankets, quilts, sheepskins, toys, bumpers, nothing else in there. Maintaining a comfortable room temperature is also important. Avoid overheating the baby. These practices aren't just about SIDS prevention, though that's huge. They also create an optimal, undisturbed environment for your baby's developing breathing patterns. They help reduce any extra stressors on their delicate little system.
Okay, that makes sense. And you mentioned other soothing techniques earlier, things like skin-to-skin, rocking, white noise. How do those specifically connect to helping with breathing patterns? Seems less direct than safe sleep.
That's a great question, and it's quite fascinating, actually. Our sources really emphasize the physiological impact of these seemingly simple actions. Take skin-to-skin contact. Holding your baby bare-chested against your bare chest. It isn't just about bonding, though that's wonderful. The consistent warmth and the rhythm of your heartbeat and breathing can actually provide external cues. These can subtly help stabilize the baby's own immature respiratory and cardiac rhythms. It's almost like a gentle external biological regulator.
Wow, okay, like tuning forks.
Sort of, yeah. And similarly, gentle, rhythmic rocking or holding. That can calm the baby's whole nervous system, reducing agitation or overstimulation that might sometimes contribute to those irregular breathing patterns. And white noise or soft, consistent sounds, think a fan or a white noise machine, by mimicking the constant soothing soundscape of the womb, can also help maintain a more settled state, which can make breathing more consistent during rest. Even something as basic as maintaining a routine for feeding and burping helps. A calm, comfortable, well-fed baby often shows fewer irregular breathing episodes simply because their whole system is less stressed and more content.
That's such a fantastic insight into the why behind those practices. It's not just general nice things to do advice, it's actually tailored support for their developing systems.
Absolutely. It connects the caregiving actions directly to the baby's physiology. And speaking of anxieties, one of the biggest worries for new parents, understandably so, is sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDs. It's vital to be clear here, and our sources are unanimous on this. Periodic breathing is not a sign of SIDs. It does not increase SIDs risk.
That's so important to hear directly.
It really is. SID's risk is linked to factors like unsafe sleep environments, tummy sleeping, soft bedding, bed sharing in unsafe circumstances, overheating, exposure to tobacco smoke, and other factors. It's not linked to these normal, brief, developmental breathing pauses. Following those safe sleep guidelines we just hammered home, that is the single best prevention strategy parents have for reducing SID's risk. It's so crucial for parents to understand this distinction because it can alleviate a massive amount of anxiety and let them focus on enjoying their baby and practicing safe sleep.
That is truly the most important reassurance, I think. So, just to reiterate, remember, the vast majority of newborns experience some form of periodic breathing. It's a normal developmental phase. It's a temporary part of their journey to maturity, and typically, it just disappears as your baby grows. Most episodes are brief, they correct themselves, the baby is fine. Our sources consistently remind us that by about 6 months old, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later, most infants are breathing much more smoothly and regularly. It doesn't indicate any underlying illness or predict long-term breathing problems down the road. So if your baby's otherwise happy, feeding well, gaining weight, and looks generally healthy and pink, you're almost certainly witnessing a perfectly normal, albeit maybe startling, phase of their development. Okay, so to wrap up our deep dive today, newborn periodic breathing. It's normal, it's temporary, it reflects an immature respiratory and neurological system, not an illness. Understanding that critical difference between these normal, brief pauses and the more concerning symptoms, longer pauses, color changes, distress, that's crucial for your peace of mind, as is diligently following safe sleep guidelines and maybe using some of those soothing techniques to create the best possible environment for your baby's developing rhythms.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's really about empowerment through knowledge, isn't it? Knowing what's normal and what isn't allows you, the parent, to move past that unnecessary anxiety and to truly enjoy those precious, honestly fleeting early months with your baby. Rather than spending them constantly watching, worrying, uncertain, it helps transform observation into understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. This deep dive really showed us how just getting a clear look at the facts can transform that anxiety into confidence. So here's a thought to leave you with. What other seemingly small quirks of newborn development, maybe their little startles or hiccups or sneezes, might you now approach differently? Armed with curiosity, ready to maybe deep dive into understanding them fully. It's all part of learning to trust the incredible process of development and ultimately trusting your own informed instincts as a parent.